Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I have a statement that we hear a ton about, and we're going to unpack that today. And we hear a lot when people say that we're going to take your business to the next level. I've heard that a ton. I've heard that from personal development, business development, all different types of spots. People say, hey, let's take your business to the next level. And I never know really what that means. So I wanted to unpack that today. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Andy McDowell. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, Dave. Glad to be with you
Awesome.
today.
Good. You're the owner of Generate Your Value. So what in the world's going on at Generate Your Value these days, Andy?
Much along the line of what you just said, right?
Well, good. Well, good. Then I'm in the right place. Excellent. I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot.
We want to take your life, your leadership, and your business to the next level, meaning you have tremendous potential ahead of you. So do you want to capture that? Do you want to live out your fullest potential in life and in leadership, or are you still in your comfort zone? What do you want to do?
Well, and that's awesome. I thank you for filling in what that means, because again, I hear a lot of people say take your business to the next level, and they don't really give you much of that. When you say that I have tremendous potential, for the people listening and for myself, quite frankly, I'm like, come on, Andy, you don't really know me. How do you know that I'm not at my maximum? How do you know that I have tremendous potential? So just kind of dispel that myth up front, because I'm guessing there's some people listening that don't feel they have that tremendous potential. What do you say to those people?
Well, I go back to my belief system. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in a higher power, and I believe that all human beings were created in the image of the higher power, and that you were created for a purpose. And we live on an earth school. We're here to grow our souls. We're here to live out that potential, learn through our mistakes, in an effort to grow our souls. And so that's how I answer that question when somebody asks me is,
Okay.
that potential is, yeah, you have the potential to truly impact the world because you
And
were created to do that. So
And I love that you used the word purpose, because, for me, I wrote a book called Growing on Purpose. It was a business book. It wasn't a Christian book. It wasn't designed with that in mind. It's not a good or bad, right or wrong. And I think purpose from a business perspective, I mean, do you run into a lot of people that don't know why they're doing what they're doing? I mean, they're
oh
just kind
yes.
of floating along. They're just kind of showing up every day, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. So to those people, because I think that list is probably growing the more that people, age in the workforce, they start to wonder, what the heck am I doing here? How do you help those people that are sitting there listening right now, and they're like, I don't know what my purpose is in life, or I don't know what my purpose even is for my business. So any feedback that you have for those people, Andy?
Well, I believe our purpose and our journey on the earth is to find joy, happiness, and success in our life every single day. So you got to start with a joy and happiness piece. What activities, what types of things bring you joy and happiness in your life on any given day? And if you don't know what that is, then you need to go try some things
Sure.
to see, does it check that box or doesn't it?
Sure.
And
Okay.
so it's just this journey of keep following your intuition and your nose, so to speak, trying different things till you hit upon something. There's a lot of people who have traumas in their life and they work themselves through it, and then they say, well, I don't want other people to go through the hell that I just went through, so I'm going to make my life purpose to go out and help those that might be in the same situation I was in the beginning, and try to ensure they don't go through the pain and suffering that I went through. Is another avenue you might go through in terms of a
Sure.
purpose.
Sure. And I think that when people hear purpose, I know for me, what I think of these big grandiose plans and, like you said, change the world, affect the world. But I think that I know for myself, Andy, when I start thinking that large, not that that's good or bad, I really struggle with how to engage, so I think about my question is should we start with some smaller purposes? Like you just said, I've just gone through something and I don't want other people to go through it. So I'm going to tell whoever I can about that. That's affecting your immediate area, which is way different than affecting the world. And again, I don't think either one's right or wrong. I'm just curious, do you tend to see that we would start if we're not familiar with purpose? If we're not familiar with that, should we be starting somewhere smaller so we get a little momentum and some victories under our belt before we jump in wholeheartedly? Or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you need to start off with what your definition of world is. Everybody immediately goes to the whole earth, but
Right.
Start defining the world as your family members or neighborhood or your town that you live in or whatever. And if you feel that your messaging or the activity that you're doing is resonating with folks, then you might take the next step to expand that definition of world to the next appropriate. It might be your state, might be the southeast of the United States or something of that nature. And if that momentum keeps going, then you're just going to keep growing your definition of what the world is. I mean, you and I both have podcasts.
Yep.
We put the content out there and you get somewhat of a listening audience. And the only way we're going to expand the listenership is for our messaging, our content to resonate with folks, and they start sharing it with others.
Sure.
And
Yep.
get kind of a grassroots, if you will, movement in it.
Right.
And if you're putting
that's awesome.
content out there that really resonates with people, or my podcast, I call them golden nuggets. If you got golden nuggets of information they can use and integrate in their life and it benefits their life, then hopefully that phrase, tell two friends and they'll tell two friends and they'll tell two friends, and it just keeps expanding because you're bringing more value to people's lives in content and the creativity that you're using to create that content. Therefore, your world is going to expand the more value that you're delivering to people's lives.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's interesting because there's so many, podcasting is just one way, right, to share your message. There's so many other ways to do that. So I'm going to go back to your early days, Andy, because you worked for Boeing and you started in corporate America. You were in that spot. And as we talked about before we jumped on today, there's a lot of people listening today that would love to make that jump into being an entrepreneur, whether officially or not. You can have that entrepreneurial blood your whole life and never really, take advantage of it. But kind of walk us through your journey of going from, I'm going to say, corporate America to owning your own company. What did that look like for you?
So I did 22 years with the Boeing company. I had a goal of 30. I had some desires to make major changes in the aviation industry, particularly in the air traffic control area, which I worked in. But unfortunately, it came to a grinding halt when thousands of Boeing employees got laid off because of the 737 crashes and the crisis that came from that.
Okay.
But one of my favorite roles or things that I did within Boeing was to mentor other people. I always approached my title and bosshood, if you will, as more of a life coach than a boss. And so I had great joy and fulfillment from helping people to grow as individuals and chase their dreams and that kind of thing. So I already had plans to do it part-time after 30 years.
Sure.
But it got cut short. So I said, okay, I want to go do it full-time for 8, 10 years and then retire,
Sure.
and go have some fun in the world. So when I got the layoff notice, it was a no-brainer to me what I was going to go do,
Sure.
because
Sure.
have a strong passion for it already, which you really need to be an entrepreneur. It's not an easy journey. And so you've got to be ready for some highs and lows and sticky points, if you will, in the beginning, and keep persevering through it, as well as being flexible to be able to pivot or change either your product or service you're offering, or your marketing, or anything of that nature, as you get feedback, as you go down the early days of, after launch of your business, to be able to pivot. When you put a business plan together and start, you're making some assumptions about the market, and you need to detail what those are and pay attention to them, and be flexible enough every month to take a look at them and say, are they validated or invalidated? And if they're invalidated, you got to be ready to pivot
Sure.
with the information that you got as to why it's an invalid assumption, and change your product or service or your marketing technique or whatever it may be, in order to find that sweet spot for you that's going to bring you success and revenue.
Sure. Wow. So 22 years at Boeing, and then you wake up one day thinking life is good, and then you get this little note in the mail that says life is not good, at least for the moment, getting laid off. Did you feel like you were going to come back? I mean, did they give you hints like this is a temporary thing, or did you know this was a permanent thing?
Well, they tried to lay me off 2 years prior to that. I had just started a major project in Moscow. Had literally just made the trip there to kick off the project, and came back into town to a layoff notice.
Wow.
And the Boeing Russia president called up the head of my division and said, "What are you doing?" So they decided to postpone it 6 months, which was the anticipated project duration, to let
Sure.
me finish it out as a leader. In that 6 months, leadership changes happened, and at the end of that 6 months, I was already turning my computer right before Christmas and say CNR or whatever, when I got a phone call from the new leader of our business, and said, who I'd worked with before, and said, "You're not going anywhere."
Wow.
So that bought me 2 years, year and a half, 2 years before the 737 issue came up. And then I joined with thousands of other employees in
Wow.
getting laid off because of the bad decision making. But so I'd already been through that cycle before, and it usually happens on a Friday morning. Both times happen on a Friday morning. You get called in the office unexpectedly, and the door's shut, and you get your notice.
Oh, wow. Well, and that's a real interesting crossroads, I'm guessing, Andy, where you can either, really go in a positive direction like you did, or that can take in a negative direction. And obviously we get to make that call every day, which road we're going to go down. I love the fact that you found joy in mentoring others. And like you said before, what your purpose has to do with, how to make yourself, how to be joyful. So you find your purpose mentoring other people, which is real similar to what happened to me. And that's what's unique in that. So you turn that into a business. Was it when, day one, you put your shingle out and, I don't know how you were, but a lot of people that I've run into think all I got to do is open up my business and people are going to flock to me, right? It's, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this, Dave. I've been waiting forever for this. Or Andy, man, I've been waiting 10 years. Where you've been, right? So do you remember the first day of business being open and for yourself, and some of the thoughts and feelings that were going through you at that time?
Yeah, well, I had an understanding the business I built within Boeing was a global business with governments around the world, and I was on the road half the year, visiting with those governments and doing projects and so forth. And now I'm going to open up a shingle where my marketplace is local small businesses, where I had not done one thing in that environment. So I knew the
Sure.
biggest challenge for me was my market, and nobody knows me.
Sure.
So I knew I was going to have to shake a lot of hands and go to a lot of conferences and those type things. And I launched 5 months before the pandemic.
Oh, even better.
So
Nice.
the pandemic hits, and you're stuck at home and can't go out into the world and shake a lot of hands and introduce yourself and try and build up that trust and expertise in the brand, so to
Sure.
speak, without
Yeah.
having those conversations. All you have is your resume. And so I had to pivot in 2020 and instead of shaking a lot of hands, start working on marketing means, started my podcast, got heavy into social media and other things,
Sure.
trying to get some momentum going on the business, even though I was stuck at home like
Yeah.
everybody else.
Sure.
So
Wow.
that's why I always like to hit on that flexible thing. You got to be flexible in the beginning because you never know what's going to show up at your doorstep when you launch your business.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, because I look at it. I mean, we do a ton of work with DISC, and we asked you to take one and for the show, and we looked through it, and it's awesome to see where you're coming from a personality perspective. But there are people, Andy, that are built that are more inflexible, and there's people that are built that are open to being flexible. So when the listener right now, if you're listening and you hear the word flexible, and something inside of you either is excited or kind of the red lights are going on, that's just your personality, kind of the way you're built, saying, oh, I don't know if I like that, versus, oh my gosh, that's awesome, let's do it. Was it easy for you to be flexible at the beginning? Was that shifting and that easy for you, or was that something you struggled with?
No, 20 years of the Boeing company as a leader, working up the ranks, you came to learn. I had a 30-minute commute to the office, and so in that 30 minutes, I'm running through my mind. Okay, what does my day look like? What things do I want to accomplish? What meetings do I have, and so forth? And
Yeah.
you walk through the door and into your office with that game plan, and 2 hours later, it's all thrown to hell in a handbasket because you got a call from the boss, or
Sure.
something came up on a project you weren't anticipating, or whatever it may be. As a leader, you have to be flexible and deal with whatever the day throws at you.
Yeah.
From that perspective. So I built that. I'm a planner. I like to have a goal and put my path together in front of me and how to achieve it, but had to learn to be flexible and be able to put some things on the shelf, and that'll have to wait till tomorrow or end of the week or
Sure.
whatever, because I got a fire or whatever I've got to deal with right now. And whenever you're in leadership, and if you start your own business, you're in leadership, you've got to build that flexibility in whether it comes easy for you or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's interesting, because for someone listening, again, if change and if flexibility are words that are not necessarily high on your list, that might be one of those cautionary items that either you have to work through before you jump in to be owning your own business, or you just realize maybe this isn't for me, because these are things that are going to happen. I mean, it's kind of like, well, go ahead.
Or if you have the dollars available to you, if you understand that as something that doesn't come easy for you, maybe you can hire somebody to work on your team that has that as a strength, that you can delegate things
Sure.
to that person.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Find their strengths, find your
Mhm.
weaknesses, understand where you need help. And again, whatever assessment you take, however you learn that I think that's one of the key pieces to starting your own business is understanding your strengths and understanding your limitations. And to Andy's point, if you can find somebody that does what you don't do very well. And, I've had success in my businesses finding that. I mean, I can't stand doing accounting work. That's one thing for in all my businesses, I had somebody that was doing that because for me, I walk into the accounting office and I look and they're like, man, we didn't have a good month. All the figures are red. And I'm like, you guys, all you got to do is push this one button and all the red goes to black, and they're like, no, 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 you don't understand. That's not how this works. That's how my
Mhm.
mind worked. It's like, well, just turn those numbers around. It's super easy. And it just was not, obviously the bank didn't appreciate that and they
Yeah.
don't appreciate that, but I don't mind change, but those pieces of day-to-day things that I just don't want to do. I've been fortunate in my career to be able to find somebody that's been good at doing those. So, that's the thing. I think that's the hard thing in business ownership at the beginning is usually most people have to do everything. I had to do my own invoicing at the beginning. I had to do everything. And it was
Mhm.
painful when I started my, coaching practice because it was just me. And I'm like, shoot, I got to do everything here. And I tried to delegate. I mean, obviously, I had an attorney, I had an accountant for the big stuff, but the day-to-day bookkeeping, it was me. And that was my first thing that I wanted to dump as quick as I possibly could. So, I mean, in your experience in your business now, generate your value, are you finding your strengths and then being able to delegate some of the things that you're either not good at or don't like doing? Is that been part of your journey so far?
Oh yes. I've been very introspective all my life, so I've always known what my strengths and weaknesses are. So as soon as I had the capital dollars to do it, I was hiring vendors to go
Yeah, exactly right.
do all what I call the tactical work, a lot of the tactical work, and let me be the big thinker. And it's something I push with my clients is uh, how can you get yourself to do what you need to do for your revenue in 30 hours in a week and allow the other 10 hours to be your white space to start thinking strategically about the business and how you're going to grow it and what the future looks like. There's a lot of people diving into business and they're doing all this work and they feel like they're accomplishing things. And that's not to say that they aren't. It's just
Yeah,
that it's all tactical. It's all the nuts and bolts, dot the I's, cross the T's. And there's no space in their time and their calendar to start thinking about the future and
sure.
how can you create that white space. And sometimes the answer to that is I've got to offload A, B, and C to somebody else to get it off my plate so I can create that time to do it.
Well, and I think you hit on one of the hardest things for an entrepreneur business owner to do, and that's to work on the business rather than in the business.
Yep.
We're so task oriented. We have to do this. I mean, I have to schedule time in my week on my calendar about those pieces. I choose to let my clients have access to my calendar through Calendly. So if they want to, they can schedule whatever. Well, I need to realize that if they schedule my whole week and I didn't do anything on the business, man, I feel really good at the end of the week, right? Because I helped all these people and I look and I
Yep.
go, oh my gosh, now I got a whole pile of stuff that I got to get done that's mine. And I don't like working weekends. So then it just gets kicked down the road. So I've been disciplined to be able to put time in my calendar to be able to set aside just for those types of pieces. So that's how I do it. And again, it's just one thing that worked for me. But I'm just curious if what tools you guys use that generate your value. Are there tools or things that people listening that want to go to the next level? Andy, what are some things that you guys use to try and help people along that journey?
The biggest is to try and get them to understand they are the architect of the business, and that's where they need to exist. And so what do I mean by that? Can you find your why in life and the why in business? And is that why, in the aviation world, we would say, is that at the 100,000 foot level, such that you can get yourself to a point that you can build yourself businesses with an S, businesses that fit under that umbrella of your why in life, that enables you to have joy, happiness, and success in your life every day. And so how seriously do you label yourself or see yourself as an architect? And that's the role you need to keep and never give it to anybody else, and be working your business to the point that you can sort of get totally out of the day-to-day, and use what profits or capital resources or loans or whatever, to be able to then go start another business that aligns with your why in life, so that you still have that passion and perseverance in doing it, and always keep that architect role.
That architect role is really, that's an interesting word to use, because to me, the architect is very intentional. I mean, there's very, I had a business in the construction industry, so I'm real familiar with, they draw a plan. Without that plan, there's no way you're building that structure. I mean, it's
Right.
impossible to build a structure other than an igloo out of snow, but you're not building a 2-3 story building without an architect. And so, I think about that intentional piece, and I think about that kind of the opposite is right now what is real popular is the quiet quitting thing, and there may be people listening right now that are in that quiet quitting mode. They've kind of given up, they're disengaged, they really don't care. Somebody did something to them, whatever, right? There's such a vast difference between being in control and intentional about your future, being the architect of your business, versus that just laying back and letting whatever happens happen. If I can do nothing today, I'm happy. If I could skate by the whole day and go to the lunchroom, use the restroom, whatever, and never get anything done, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm sure there's people that think that. Did you see that a lot in corporate America at Boeing, where there were a lot of people just trying to skate under the radar, and not Boeing specific, but just in general? Did you notice that, or is that something that we're just seeing more as of late because of the COVID and things like that?
I think I saw it. So have to understand a little bit of the history of Boeing. So I worked for a very small entrepreneurial firm that got bought by a company called Jeppesen. And within a year of them buying our small little company, Boeing bought Jeppesen. And the culture of Jeppesen was very much a sort of a family atmosphere. Everybody cared for each other. Everybody loved working at the place and so forth. Then
Sure.
the big B came in with its huge bureaucracy, and started trying to force square pegs into round holes,
Gotcha.
to try and get us as a service business to fit into a manufacturing model of a business.
Oh, okay.
And so you started seeing more as time went on, more and more people doing that quiet quitting kind of thing, because they were dealing with the bureaucracy of a huge company that they feel like they couldn't do anything to try and influence or motivate it to do something different, much more like what Jeppesen was.
Sure.
From that perspective. So I would put myself in that boat as well.
So was there frustration there, Andy? I mean, is that like where I would feel like if I couldn't do something, I couldn't move that, I couldn't fix it, I couldn't change it, that would feel really frustrating to me. That would be really stressful. Is that kind of where you
It's
ended up?
hugely frustrating. And I was trying to help or influence the company to become more of an aviation company as opposed to an airplane or aircraft
Okay.
company.
Okay.
The strategic pundits at Harvard Business Review, Peter Drucker, was putting out articles that I was throwing in everybody's lap, going, "How can you not see this as a
Sure.
potential game changer for us as a company?" When he's saying, he who makes the major actor in a big ecosystem in an industry has the best strategic advantage in what Internet of Things and other technologies were bringing and changing in the business world. And I would give a presentation on that to anybody that would listen.
Yeah.
A system of systems kind of thought process, and it was all spreadsheet watching and sort of incremental growth. How do we get more efficiency out of an engine on an airplane, and
Sure.
those type things, as to really sitting back and saying, how is the world changing, and we need to get into other things within aviation to have majorly growth within the business. And there just wasn't an appetite for it. And so I just felt like I was hitting my head against a brick wall, and kept asking myself, well, what other path is there for me here?
Sure.
But when you reach the level I was at within the company, and you're trying to go up and make better and bigger strategic
Yeah.
decisions, and your ideas that could be that are just sort of poo-pooed, if you will, just like, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I
Well,
was sort of at that stage when the layoff
yeah.
happened.
Well, and you only get one kick at the can in this life. I mean, it's not like, you can try something again next life. This is it. And it's unique because people get stuck here. And, my dad, when he was alive, he was kind of the opposite. He was in the aerospace engineering world. And if the leadership and him didn't align, rather than him just quietly, fall away, he would leave, and he would try and find, and people would look at his resume, and he'd spend a few years here, a few years there. Which, back then, that was a big thing. I mean, my grandpa, his dad, spent his whole career at one place. That was
Yep.
like the norm, right? Back in the whatever 50s or whenever that was, 40s. That was like and I wore that for myself as a badge of honor. I owned a company for about 20 some years, and before we sold. And I think that people wear that as a badge of honor. And again, not that either one's right or wrong. I just think that, it's hard for people to stay at a place if they don't see a future. When you say fast forward your life 5 years, where do you see yourself? And when you see that look of terror on their face because they don't see anything changing, they maybe there's a new coat of paint on the walls in their office, but that's the extent of it. That's got to really be challenging. And that's what I think is so awesome about looking at starting your own business, maybe doing it as a side hustle, whatever, but finding something that actually energizes you and engages you is so important. So we just encourage people whenever we can to just realize you have options. I'm not here to tell everybody to quit their jobs. I just want people to realize there's options. And you and I are talking about one potential option. And, you had the safety of Boeing. I mean, a lot of people listening would be like, oh my gosh, what a great company to work for. It's safe. It'll never go out of business, blah, blah, blah. Well, then, you get this little piece of paper, and then come on in my office here real quick, Andy. I got something to tell you on a Friday morning, and that safety net's gone, So was that hard for you, or was that just was that safety? Did you miss that safety in running your own business, starting your own business?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I say I didn't miss it.
Yeah.
You're putting the risk, if you will, in other people's hands.
Right.
And you're not worrying about the risk per se. You're just worried about whatever your teams and your individual goals are. So you're not bearing the risk, but you're also not bearing the reward. And when I say reward, it's more than just the money side. It's the emotional, spiritual side as well of
Right.
going after your purpose in life and making an impact more than just the media team that's sitting outside your office door
Right.
in what you do.
For sure. Wow.
So you gotta be comfortable or comfortable enough with risk if you're going to go be an entrepreneur, because you're taking it all on.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're risk averse, that's probably not the spot for you, at least to go from, a salary and a 401k and a company car and 4 weeks of vacation and right? From that
Yeah,
to
maybe you start with a side gig that you're paying the bills is not necessarily dependent upon it, but you get your feet wet and get some experience, and maybe allows you to launch eventually when you're comfortable with the risk. But
Yep. No, that's a great spot as well. So, well, hey, as we come in for a landing, which you appreciate being in the aerospace or in the aviation industry, we say that every week.
yeah,
As we come in for a landing this week,
yeah.
what would be a golden nugget that you would have for someone listening? It may be something we covered, maybe it's something that we didn't. I mean, what's sitting on your heart right now that you want to share with the listeners?
So when I usually get asked this question, I go towards something I talk a lot with my clients about, and that's love versus fear.
Okay.
Uh, when you start looking at the decisions that you're making in your life, you reach that fork in the road and you have to make a decision, whether it's big or small. Can you use that kind of filter system to say, okay, what would be the love response and what would be the fear response? And as much as you can in your life, choose the love response. Love for self and love for others.
Wow. That's powerful. Yeah. Operating out of fear is usually not a smart spot to be operating from. I mean, most businesses don't succeed if fear is the only thing that's hanging around, right?
Uh, ask the former CEO of Kodak.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Any of those former CEOs, Radio Shack, Kmart. I mean, oh my gosh, right? Those big monsters that you'd figure would never go anywhere, you know.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
It
So,
allows it
go
allows
ahead.
for business in life to sort of pass you by because you're sitting in your comfort zone with sort of blinders on, so to speak, and the world
Yeah,
passes you by.
yeah,
And that could be a slow rate, or it could be a fast rate, depends on the particular area that or the place that you're sitting in life or in business. But
sure.
um,
Well, it's interesting because as we land, I think that for somebody listening, there are people listening, like I said, right now that want to figure out a way to be more joyful in their journey, find some purpose, find some intentionality. And one aspect of that may be owning your own business, maybe not, don't know. I mean, again, we're not here to advocate one or the other. So rather than jump into your next activity, I just want to encourage the listener today to really think about this. Get with yourself and find where that purpose is, and maybe it's the small purpose like we talked about. And maybe it's just a real small. Maybe it's just your family that you want to start influencing in a different way. It would be awesome if every person in this world wanted to influence their family in a positive way. I mean, this place would turn over overnight, if people are running into roadblocks, if they're not sure what the next steps are, Andy, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
my website, www.generateyourvalue.com is, or send me an email at andy@generateyourvalue.com and let's start a conversation. I'm never afraid to have conversations.
Cool.
It's just a
Yep.
conversation.
Right. Yeah. And you never know where it's going to go.
Never know what's going to go. And it may be a decision point at the end of it. It may not be.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And also for anyone interested that wants to learn more, Generate Your Value podcast is out there as well. And Andy hosts that. So, if you want to learn more about him before you maybe reach out to him, that's a great way to start. That's the least aggressive way, is just listen. There's no, right? He doesn't call you. There's nothing, right? I mean, I know people are nervous. Like, I totally get it. That people are sitting here going, man, I want purpose in my journey. I want to take my business to the next level, but I have no clue how. So the least, the easiest way, I should say, is to just jump on a couple of his podcast episodes. He's got great guests. Listen to some of those myself. So those are awesome. And if that sparks something, then you know what? Jump on generateyourvalue.com and find a way to connect with Andy. And again, pick his brain about where he transitioned from, corporate into being a business owner. Pick his brain about his purpose and his journey. And again, I learn so much each week from people. That's one of the biggest reasons I do this is, it's a great way for me to learn, with Andy, and you just happen to be listening because these are my questions. So I wanted to know this for myself, so.
Well, my co-host Zach and I say it's not a subscribe button, it's a follow button. It has the word subscribe on it, but Zach and I are on a journey of learning. And we invite you to come along with us, with the podcast every week, interviewing great people and learning things ourselves. So why not jump in the wagon behind us and join us, follow us on that journey?
Absolutely. And you can jump out anytime. For you commitment phobic people, you can jump out anytime, right? So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for opening up a part of your life to us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting some meaning to what it means to take your business to the next level. And can't wait to keep learning from you. And thanks for everything that you're doing.
And thanks for the invite and everything that you're doing. And thank you for generating your value in this world.
Absolutely. Can't wait. See you guys next week.